Hello, everybody, and welcome to Equality and Diversity in the Music Industry with Music Industry Insights Worldwide. And today we have the amazing Grace with us. Hi, Grace, how are you?
Hi, Sas. I'm great, thanks. Yeah, nice to be here.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for coming along. Do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, what you do in the music industry, and how long you've been doing it for?
I am a monitor engineer, which is a live sound engineer specializing in the sound that musicians hear on stage rather than the sound that audience members hear out front. I've been doing it a very, very long time. In fact, my whole working life's been in shows.
Yeah.
I've been touring as a monitor engineer for over 25 years.
Mhm.
Um, But before that, I was a technical manager of a venue. And before that, I ran a local crew and worked in a venue, blah, 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 ever since I finished university.
Fantastic. So you've had quite a long time in the industry. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your education and how you've kind of learned what you do in the job? How did you kind of get the skills to do that?
Yeah. Well, I went to university
Yeah,
in the 80s. I'm
yeah.
going to age myself here. Uh, and I graduated in 1990, actually. But I did a physics and electronics degree, which, of course, in today's world is massively out of date. All our knowledge is very ancient, but the fundamentals were really useful to everything that I've ever done work-wise. Um, but even when I was at uni, I was putting on gigs and doing the production for shows that came through the University Student Union and little gigs and so on and so on. I was working with a band as a sound engineer, and I did a couple of recording sessions. Just getting my toe in the water. Even back then, um, I played drums and I played in a couple of bands. And then I finished my degree, and weirdly, it seems strange now, I had a £300 debt when I finished my degree, and I was mortified. And I got a job throwing tarmac around and digging holes in the road and working for a ground worker
Right.
because I couldn't stand having this debt.
Mm.
And paid off this debt, and then went on the dole because you could then, and threw myself into the band, and then a venue opened up where I was living, brand new venue, and they needed stage crew, and I jumped at the chance, and I joined a stage crew. Ended up running that stage crew, and then left that in the mid 90s to work as a technician at a venue elsewhere, and then became the technical manager there for a few years, and then went on the road in the late 90s, and haven't really looked back.
That's amazing. So what kind of challenges and barriers have you faced accessing and working in the music and entertainment industries?
Well, this is an interesting. I was giving this quite a bit of thought before the podcast. I'm a relatively recently out person as a trans person,
Mm.
so a huge amount of my background is in my previous, uh, what's the word, born gender, I suppose. Um, uh, so that I bring a lot of male privilege with me because most of my experience has been gathered under my old guise, shall we say. Um, so it's a tricky question because I was thinking about it quite a lot, and um, could I twist the question around a bit and
Of
throw it back
course
a
you
little bit
can. You
differently?
can answer it however you
Um,
want to answer it.
I Instead of that, the challenge was to actually be honest about myself, and
Mhm.
I'd immersed myself in quite a male dominated sphere. I
Yeah.
think right through my career, even now, it's still quite male dominated, quite cis white male dominated. I think most people would agree with that. It is changing. I don't want to sound all doomy and gloomy about that, but I deliberately, I think, in some subconscious way, went into a sector where I couldn't be who I am
Right.
because of the classic sort of trans. There's a name for it, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's like a repression of your identity, but
Yeah.
and people join the army for the same sort of reasons, don't they, and stuff. And
Yeah.
I didn't give myself the breathing space that I needed, and that was a huge challenge to my well-being and my own inner health. And I worked really hard at it, and I threw myself into my work, and of course, but um, it was the pandemic that gave me the breathing space, to be
Wow.
honest with you. And it was only then that when everything kind of crashed to a halt,
Mm.
that I couldn't avoid it anymore, really. And here we are. But it's
Congratulations.
kind of a different, sorry, it's a different question, but and it's a different kind of answer to your question. But it challenges as a gender diverse person
Yes.
now are interesting. That's kind of, again, sorry, it's a slightly different question, but
No, that's perfect. Let's talk about that.
I've been since April last year, when the music industry really kind of got back on its feet. I've been very, very busy.
Mm.
I've this last year has been the first year I've been back in the full on touring fray as Grace, not old me, for pandemic reasons, really. And but then I've been all over Europe. I've been to the USA. I've been all over the UK, as Grace, and I was very much full of apprehension about how that would be. But I've got my passport, which says my name in it and my correct gender and so on, and it's all been absolutely fine. So, well, I say fine. It's been just as fine as anything else I'm doing. So, I've really enjoyed it, and I decided I needed to do this stuff to be good to myself and to be honest to my inner being, because my work has been a big part of me, and even though I'm modest about it, I'm pretty experienced, and I can do a reasonably good job. So I think I owed it to myself to be doing what I'm experienced in as Grace, and to see some of these places again through slightly different eyes, maybe. The tribulations of it all are things like misgendering.
Yeah.
I don't get dead named or anything, because not many people know my dead name. So yeah, it's not the most straightforward question to answer.
What about
I bring my own little
representation?
mess of contradictions with me. So yeah.
No, it's fine. And like looking at representation across what you do you see any other gender diverse people doing?
I've met one other lady who's trans woman, who I met I knew about her. She's a lady called Laura. She's a guitar tech, works for kind of rock bands, metal bands. And I knew of her existence, and we'd had a couple of text messages. And then I was doing the festival last summer,
Mm.
and I spotted her in the distance, and I was like, I think that's Laura. And I could see that she was looking over at me. And I just went, you know what, sod it. Hello. So, and broke the ice big time. But that was really nice. But we agreed between us that we were the only two visibly trans women that in touring crew world that either of us were aware of.
Yeah.
Now, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean there aren't other trans people out there, but I'm middle-aged. Laura's a bit younger than me, but she ain't super young. And maybe that's what we really mean. I don't know, but I can easily imagine there's people out there who are, gender diverse, who just are just getting on with their lives. And
Yes.
but one of the reasons I'm very happy to be out there touring as Grace is very much so that younger people who might be gender non-conforming or gender diverse might be able to go, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it.
That's beautiful.
And that, I think that's quite a motivation for me, to be honest. But I don't try and do anything particularly
Just be yourself.
pointedly because I'm trans. I just try and be me. I am basically the same person. I'm just much happier.
Yes.
So,
So great. Myself, I
yeah.
totally get you. I
Yeah.
totally do. I'm just blown away with you sharing all this information with us and to the viewers as well, because I think it's super important that other people understand some of the struggles and barriers. And how has that kind of impacted you? How has that impacted the way you feel? How has that is that added an additional layer on of what you have to do already? How does that work?
Um, Not the opposite. I feel better. It's easier because I'm not. I think across my life, I mean, you know, my story's complex, and we don't need to go into too much of it, but um, uh, we haven't got time. But I think I'll just try and get the words right. Sorry, I'll just take a moment. There was a totally fundamental lifting of weight from my brain and from my soul when I embraced it and did the whole coming out thing and got past that initial step. I felt much lighter in a number of ways. Not that I was particularly sad or troubled before that in an external or day-to-day sense, but it was a very deep-rooted thing, obviously. And so it gave me a different kind of spring in my step. And I used to smoke quite a lot. I used to smoke quite a lot of pot, and I haven't done any of that since then. That's all gone. I don't really drink. So all that kind of stuff's gone away. And, you know, of course it was self-medicating, wasn't it? But so that's just evaporated. It was very easy to do. That's my joke, is it's much easier to give up smoking than it is to come out as transgender.
Oh, that's amazing.
The work is the work, isn't it? And I think sometimes I raise an eyebrow when, because I'm still quite strong, and you know, I'll still load a truck and I'll still throw flight kisses around, and I'll just walk up to something and go, I was always strong. So deal with something and people are like,
inspirational.
oh. and I can still call it, and I've still got quite a male voice, and I can still bark orders across a room and admonish people for doing something stupid. And you know, I have a certain amount of seniority in what I do, and so it's quite fun to confuse people a little bit, to be honest. But that's just the cheek in me. You know, I'm a bit cheeky, so
it's a transition as well, isn't it? And it's a
yeah.
process.
There are some of the challenges that I face are very personal, and they're more internal than anything else.
Yeah.
There are days when I catch myself thinking I'm behaving as like old me. Now that's a double-edged sword, because I am still old me, really. I'm just me, right? And and I don't want to lose that person, because it's just the same person, and it would be wrong to go, that's then, this is the future. I need my way of being as a person. I need to just move it forwards and carry on. But it still niggles, and it still gets in the back of here somewhere that
I understand.
That's the guy version of me being that person, because that's my background, that's my experience, and that's the curse of the male privilege. Is it turns into an imposter syndrome thing, is the short answer of that. But and that can do your head in, as I'm sure people know. Imposter syndrome is a toughie. But and there are days when I think maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe I should find something else to do, because I can actually not have to tussle with all that stuff.
No, you can't.
But I can't stop. I mean, this is my best chance of earning a living anyway.
Yeah.
I haven't got much choice in the matter. And I'm good at it. So, you know, I kind of need to do it, and I need to represent as well. So I've got some good motivation. But yes, it definitely, there are some days when that's a bit of a thing. I won't lie about it. And then there's other stuff like, you know, personal space on a tour bus is, you know, but that, you know, ask any woman who's been on a tour bus about that. That's nothing special and nothing new, and I'm not going to preach to the choir about it. It's slightly more, you know, there are days when, to get a little bit over detailed, I can't, you know, clean myself up and present properly, because we've been on a long bus ride and we're straight into work when we get there, and that's the reality of work. And I just have to get over myself and go, oh God, okay then, you know, and but c'est la vie. And
you're smiling and you do it, so that's the main thing, right? As long as you're smiling, that's the main thing.
So and I think there's some slightly odd bits of that which come with being a trans woman, even more so than perhaps being a trans man, actually. But you know, where I need to spend a little bit of time in the bathroom before I can, you know, present properly, not to put too fine a point on it. So that can get inside your head a little bit, like, oh, you know, but you know, at the same time, I am very, very thick-skinned, and I can just
Gotta
get
be.
on with it, and
Yeah.
I'll internalize that stuff and just deal with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so
The
much.
misgendering thing's interesting. I do a lot of travel. I get on planes a lot. I get on trains a lot. I get on, whatever. And I was on a plane going to New York, coming back from New York, I think it was in November. And when the cabin crew do the trolley up and down the aisle and they're bringing
Yeah.
out the drinks or the meal, and there's two people on either side of the trolley, and there was a lady with her back coming up the aisle, and she leaned over. Excuse me, sir, what would you like to drink? And then I
Sorry.
got my drink, and then the guy who was coming and seeing the back of my head was, "Madam, what would you like to eat?" It's like within like that, and it's like, this is really, really annoying. If he could do it, why can't you? Then I realized that she, whatever. It's no aspersions or not, it's kind of just whatever. But it was really weird. I was just like, wow, that's within 30 seconds of each other.
Yeah.
One's right and one's wrong, and
Yeah.
neither of them are actually trying to do anything correct or wrong. They're just working. They're just doing their jobs, and it's like that's really kind of odd. And
But the longer you do something as well, the easier it becomes. And the more you
yeah, it gets in. It's funny. It's like in the sort of hospitality industry, the service industry of hotels and travel and stuff. People are trained to sir and madam, aren't they? And
yeah.
it's polite and formal, and part of the service industry is to you get trained to say these things, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I've got to a point now. It's like, why do they have to even just say either of them? And it's just
That's
it's
a
not
good
necessary. You can still be polite without saying sir or madam. And look at me.
smile. Yeah, I'd rather
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
you know,
I do.
got bright red nails and lipstick on, and so anyway, that again, trials and tribulations, but yeah, and actually, it's quite a useful little passive aggressive tool when you get pissed off with someone. So, well, actually,
I was going to
and
ask, actually, what's your thoughts on equality and diversity in the music industry itself? What are your kind of thoughts and views on that? How do you
I
think you're doing that?
well, from my own experience of coming out as trans in a world where lots of people know me, I've been received very warmly by almost everybody.
Yeah.
Very little challenge to it, very much acceptance, very much like, oh, okay, might take me a moment, but cool. Some really lovely stuff, one or two really, really, really lovely things. I've had the opportunity to meet people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, I
Yeah.
think, and that's been
Nice.
brilliant. But in the bigger picture, it's quite interesting because talking to people, it's like, well, it is an very open industry. It's a very creative world, so you're going to be fine. And that kind of assumption is there within and without the industry. I think that because it's full of creatives, it will be open-minded. But it doesn't mean that there's lots and lots of diversity and equality. It doesn't actually exist that broadly. And I think, like I said earlier, I bring a position of privilege with me from my background. And I'm changing within that privileged position. So I'm not quite seeing it where I'm
Same.
not coming in as a 25, 30-year-old trans woman going, I want to be a roadie.
Mm.
I'm changing within the job, within a position where people know and respect me for my work. So it's a really strange place to be. And I realized that. And, we can get into an intersectionality conversation here, but it's a tricky one because actually there's definitely less women around than there ought to be. People who are queer in any way probably keep it to themselves quite a lot, I would say.
Mm.
It's not like a place where you couldn't be outwardly queer,
Yeah.
but people
Yeah.
just tend to keep a little on it. It has the background, especially the touring roadie world, has that background from the past of being a very cis white male,
Yeah.
rough and ready world for sure. And roadies have a reputation from the old times, don't they? But that's gone. I mean, a lot of those people have retired and left. And interestingly, I think the pandemic was a bit of a wheat and chaff
Yeah.
moment for my brethren, and
Mm.
some of the more archaic types just haven't come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's hope and there's positivity for the future, but I don't think it's where it ought to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about it. That's, like I was saying to you earlier on, one of my motivators for carrying on in my business, my industry, is to just be there and be visible. And, you know, I accept that I'm a visibly trans woman, and therefore I ain't going to hide that. I can't hide that. So just crack on. And if anybody sees like, oh, Grace is doing it, that means I can too. That's a win, right?
Beautiful. That's empowering. That's inspirational. That's educational. That's a role in itself. And you should be super proud of yourself. Like you said, you're doing something from the inside out. I see quite a few artists now in the performance side of the industry where I'm starting to see more diversity within trans and gender diverse people, but I am concerned about the music business side of things, where I think we still need to do quite a lot more than the performance side.
Yeah, I agree. I think within the creatives, within the artists themselves and the musicians and the session players and the like, it's very much if you can deliver the goods, it doesn't really matter. And actually, the business side of people will see that as a little thing to use to their advantage in terms of standing out in the crowd, which is a bit cynical, but it's also, the music business is a very cynical place to be from the business point of view, as we know, right? And you know, it's ultra capitalism at the end of the day. So it's a very much, you know, it's beyond dog eat dog, isn't it? Let's face it. So anything that you've got that makes you stand out. I was talking to someone last year about some of this, and they were like, there are going to be people out there who'll go and hire you now because you're trans. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. And actually, that hasn't happened, but she's probably right. Somewhere in my future, that might happen. And that's a sign of, that's a positive thing, because it's like, well, we want an all encompassing intersectional band and crew. Maybe someone out there is going to want that. Who knows? And can I use that as a selling point? I don't know. I'd rather that my skills and my knowledge and my personality get me a job than anything else.
Yeah, but I think we all want that. And I think that's an amazing point you make. I think you don't want to be chosen because of what you are. You want to be chosen because of who you are and what your skills are.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, that again, that's bringing my old privilege back to it, because that's how I've always found work, is the right work finds me rather than anything else.
Well, I think we touched on this as well. Do you think kind of cultural and age differences have a kind of impact on the progress of equality and diversity in the music industry?
Yeah, I think, as you know, like you say, we sort of brushed against it. As you know, I'm not young. I've been doing it a long time, and I've definitely noticed that some other faces haven't reappeared since the pandemic. So there's people I've known all my career who've disappeared. There's a gap at the bottom of the age range, because there's a lot of people who haven't done gigs for 2 years who are now suddenly in at the deep end. So there's an experience gap at both ends of that spectrum. I think, therefore, people who are good and are suited to the life, because it's quite vocational doing what I do. And it tends to not let you go as well. That's what kids have always asked me, how do you get into it? And my stock response is, actually, you don't get into it. It gets a hold of you. And if it's into you, it will never let you go.
It's lovely.
And it seems to be true. I know people have stopped and then just had to come back because they can't really hack it being at home and stuff.
So does being in the music industry affect your mental health? I think you've answered some of that already, but can we just elaborate on that a little bit more? So would you say it's affected your mental health and your well-being?
I think it affects everybody's mental health. It's full on. It's intense. It's an all-encompassing, immersive experience working in this industry. If you're doing touring, if you're traveling the world, you know, getting paid to sit on an airplane and be ready for a work and do something quite intense as a job and quite specialist, and it's a long day, and then you're doing it again tomorrow, and blah blah blah. It can't not affect people's well-being. In the many years I've done this, I've had lots of dear friends who have either been or become functional alcoholics, functional drug users, all sorts of things. and it's all self-medication.
Yeah.
I have an allotment at home, which is a really useful grounding device, basically, as well as being lots of fun.
I love it.
It's my zen space, and it's where I ground myself by coming back, fly back from, I don't know, wherever, Los Angeles. And the first thing I'm thinking about when I've got a few days to myself is go and check on my vegetables, you know.
Oh, that's nice. And you're being self-efficient as well. You're being super efficient. So that's really good.
Yeah, no, it's a hobby. It's not self-sufficient. And even after 10 years of having an allotment, I'm not really very good at it, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
You're
It's
the one.
about being outdoors and doing your own little thing. And it's actually what it's really about is stuff that takes place over a period of time that has a different flow to it, because doing shows is like a rolling, every day is an achievement, and you roll and roll and roll and roll. But it's like you reset every morning.
Yeah.
And you're trying to do the same thing with a slightly different set of challenges every day. So it's a very different kind of temporal space to occupy when you're growing vegetables, because it's going to take 6 months, you know.
Yeah, it takes time. And I think we've touched on that a few times. I think it takes time, patience, and perseverance, right?
Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you like to see improve in the future in the music and entertainment industries? If you could say one thing, what would you like it to be?
More diversity, more inclusive. Well, the inclusivity I think is there. It just needs to be engineered into a better, you know, more open format. But I think that diversity is there waiting to happen. I know plenty of women who work in the music industry, but it's just numbers, you know.
Yeah.
It's not an even spread, and it's not an even spread on a racial basis. It's not an even spread on a gender or sexuality basis. It's just not even numbers. And everything that happened, if it was more representative of the percentages in the world, it would be better, wouldn't it? And because you know, variety brings balance.
That's right.
And you get different points of view that balance things out. And I've been on a couple of tours and kind of groups of people over the years where the gender mix has been much closer to 50-50, and they've been fantastic.
Yeah.
And very, very interesting comparison to all male situations and so on, and much more pleasant, but I might be biased. But yes, diversity beyond just, you know, men and women is still very uneven and patchy. I mean, I suppose in some musical spheres, you know, you can start talking about, you know, the hip hop scene, or as opposed to the heavy metal scene, you know, there are very clear differences, but some of that's about specialisms, and I don't think that'll ever really mutate too far, will it? Because it's about being a specialist in something.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and we do live and work in a very specialized environment.
Yes.
And you do need to be, you know, I don't have a specialist style of music, but I have a very niche job, and I think my CV ends up getting me more gigs because of that CV being what it is. Those gigs will come in certain directions. So,
amazing. If you want to share any major wins or successes, or if there's any way that the viewers can contact you, or if they wanted any advice, is there any links or anywhere that people could get hold of you or contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Grace Howat. That's probably the easiest social media way. I've got some creative stuff that I do, but that's not really work related, so it's probably not the right thing to share here.
I'll share them in the bio below. I'll share all the links in the bio below as well. So
but yeah, I'm definitely there. I don't post a lot, but I do read LinkedIn posts, so I'm around. If people want to message me, that's fine.
That's amazing. I've learned so much, and thank you again for coming along and chatting to us today and just sharing your views, your experience, and your knowledge. It's been fantastic.
Oh, that's very flattering.
Honestly,
I don't feel I've got that much to share, but it's
you do.
I'm always happy to have a chat. And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to have a chat, if you want another chat sometime, no worries. I'm sure we'll be talking anyway. But
certainly will be. We certainly will be. Thank you.
If anybody's out there at a festival on a stage, have a look at Monitor World and look out for me. you can't really miss me. So
Look out for Grace at Monitor World. I'll be putting that down in
do come and say hello. That's all
come and
fine.
say
I'm
it to
very
Grace.
friendly. I'm very approachable.
Yes,
I might not look like it, but I
you
am.
are indeed.
Especially when I am in full flow.
And that's a recommendation from Saskia. So make sure you go and say hi to Grace. And thanks
Yeah,
again.
you're very welcome, Sas.